Well, Brownsville and Matamoros are known as sister cities, and in tonight's Throwback Thursday, Cameron County Historical Commissioner Eugene Fernandez explains how both cities leaned on each other during the Mexican Revolution.
What we're going to talk about today goes back in the history between Brownsville and Matamoros, the United States and Mexico, in a very dear proportion. It was the Mexican Revolution. You have what's called the Hermanas Gemelas, which were the twin sisters, Matamoros and Brownsville in particular. Whatever happened over there, we felt it over here. And the Mexican Revolution was a very, very good example. What's almighty important when you're considering the Mexican Revolution and trying to analyze it is, by all means, do not take it in the terms of the 21st century. It occurred in 1910 all the way up to about 1919. But at that point in time, you must consider that the world was far different than it is nowadays. You had various governments that were monarchies. You had England, you had Spain, you had Norway, you had Italy. They all were under the power of a monarchy structure. The American Revolution was the first, what you'd call, new form of democracy government that occurred up into modern times. Then you had the French Revolution, then you had the Russian Revolution, then you had the Mexican Revolution. One particular element of supreme importance in this whole picture is that you must consider the transition period that Porfirio Diaz was entering into. The 30 years that he was in power, he actually reigned as a supreme monarch. There were problems with that. Trying to equate that to what modern society is all about is very difficult, because back in those particular days, in that era, it was not really the popular thought that you wanted to educate the masses, that you wanted to give all the bells and whistles to the entire society, because the thought prevailed that they would come up and grab you by the throat. Well, unfortunately, that's what happened in Mexico. The first 6 years of that conflict were bound in anarchy, and that's what affected us on this side. And it affected Mexico as well. The troops were called in, the federal troops and the cavalry was called in 1916, and that pretty well abated the majority of the problems that we were having over here. There were refugees coming over to this side of the river. The ties that were formed back during those first 6 years in particular of the Mexican Revolution were very important, and they remained in the hearts of the people from Matamoros and Brownsville, because we saw that we came to each other's aid during a time of crisis. There's so much that is written on the books about what you'd call the experiment of that revolution, and the participancy from this side and the other side, and the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.